Most people don't fail at saving money because they're lazy or irresponsible. They fail because the system they're using is designed to break them. Think about this. Research shows that nearly 90% of people who set ambitious savings goals abandon them within 6 months. Not because they didn't care, but because saving felt like constant resistance. Every dollar moved into savings felt like something taken away. That's not a motivation problem. That's a psychology problem. Your paycheck hits your account. You feel briefly relieved, maybe even proud. Then life starts pulling at it immediately: rent, food, subscriptions, small comforts you've convinced yourself you deserve. And when it's time to save, it feels painful, like punishment. There's a reason for that. Your brain is wired around loss aversion. Psychologists discovered that losing $100 feels about twice as painful as gaining $100 feels good. So every time you try to save money manually, your brain interprets it as loss, even though you know logically it's good for you. This is why traditional advice like just cut back or be more disciplined almost never works long term. You're fighting biology with willpower, and biology usually wins. That's why most people quit before $3,000. Not because $10,000 is impossible, but because saving feels emotionally exhausting when done the wrong way. But here's the part most people never hear. In 2004, researchers studied people who used automatic saving systems instead of relying on motivation. The result was staggering. They saved nearly 4 times more money than people who tried to save manually. Same income, same goals, completely different outcome. The difference wasn't discipline. It was removing psychological friction. Imagine earning $67,000 a year and quietly saving close to $7,000 annually without ever feeling the sting of moving money around. No constant decisions. No guilt, no internal negotiation every month. Your future self simply taxes your current self before you ever touch the money, and your brain barely notices. This is the moment where saving stops feeling like deprivation and starts feeling invisible. In the next chapter, we'll break down the exact automation system that makes this possible, how to structure your accounts, how money flows on payday, and why this setup works even for people who swear they're bad with money. Once you understand that willpower is the problem, the solution becomes surprisingly mechanical. Saving doesn't fail because people are irresponsible. It fails because saving requires repeated decisions, and decisions drain mental energy. So instead of asking, how do I become more disciplined? The better question is, how do I remove the need to decide at all? This is where automation comes in. Imagine you earn $67,000 a year. After taxes, your paycheck lands in your checking account like it always does. But instead of sitting there, tempting you to spend it, something else happens automatically. On the same day your paycheck arrives, your bank splits the money into 2 separate paths. One account is for spending. This is where rent, utilities, groceries, gas, insurance, and normal life expenses live. It's the account you use day to day without stress or guilt. The second account is for saving. This account is invisible to your daily life. No debit card, no casual transfers. It exists purely for your future. Here, that's the important part, you decide the split once, not every month. To do this properly, you look back at the last 3 to 6 months of your spending. Not roughly, not guessing, actual numbers. This gives you a realistic picture of what your life truly costs. Once you know that number, you automate your system so only that amount flows into your spending account. Everything else goes to savings before you ever see it. This flips the script completely. Instead of trying to save whatever is left at the end of the month, which usually turns out to be nothing, you're forced to live within what remains after saving. Not through discipline. Through structure. And here's where it gets interesting. At the end of the month, most people still have a little money left in their spending account. Not because they tried, but because automation quietly prevented overuse. That leftover amount can then be automatically swept into savings as a bonus. Now saving isn't a painful action. It's the default outcome. Once money lands in savings, it has 3 logical destinations. First is an emergency fund covering 3 to 6 months of essential expenses. This isn't about growth. It's about stability. It turns financial emergencies into inconveniences. Second is a high-yield savings account. Not flashy, but it protects purchasing power and earns something instead of nothing. Third is long-term investing, where money compounds quietly over decades instead of sitting idle. What makes this system powerful isn't the accounts themselves. It's that your brain is no longer involved. You don't wake up deciding whether to save. You don't negotiate with yourself after a long day. You don't feel like you're losing money. The decision already happened. This is why people using automation save dramatically more than those relying on motivation. Saving stops being emotional. It becomes procedural. But even with the perfect system, most people still sabotage themselves before they ever reach $10,000. Not because the system doesn't work, but because the goal feels overwhelming. And that's where the real mental shift begins. In the next chapter, we'll break down why big savings goals feel impossible, how to shrink them psychologically without lowering the target, and why thinking in daily numbers changes everything. Even with the perfect automation system, most people still freeze the moment they hear the number. $10,000. It feels heavy, intimidating, unrealistic. Your brain doesn't see it as a goal, it sees it as a threat. Something too large to handle, so it responds the only way it knows how: avoidance. This is where most people quietly fail before they ever begin. They either lower the goal to something that feels safe but meaningless, or they postpone starting altogether. Both feel responsible. Both guarantee nothing changes. The problem isn't the amount, it's how the brain processes large numbers. Your mind struggles with abstract scale. $10,000 doesn't feel concrete. It feels like a wall with no visible steps. So instead of looking at the wall, you break it into pieces small enough that your brain stops panicking. $10,000 in 1 year breaks down to $833 per month. That still sounds uncomfortable, but monthly numbers aren't how life actually happens. You don't make dozens of financial decisions once a month, you make them daily, so break it again. $833 per month becomes about $27 per day. And now something interesting happens. $27 doesn't feel like a life-altering sacrifice. It feels like lunch, a coffee habit. A few small choices you already make without thinking. This is the psychological unlock. You're no longer trying to save $10,000. You're just choosing slightly better options today. Cooking at home instead of ordering takeout saves $10 to $15 instantly. Brewing coffee instead of buying a $5 latte saves another $5. Canceling subscriptions you barely use saves $1 or $2 per day. Skipping one rideshare or bar night per week quietly closes the gap. None of this requires becoming extreme or miserable. You're not cutting joy, you're trimming inefficiency. And here's the part most people miss. You're not competing with people who earn more than you. You're competing with the version of yourself that makes automatic, unexamined choices. The person next to you on the bus is making those automatic choices and wondering why money never sticks. You're making marginally different decisions and ending the year with 5 figures in the bank. But even when the math makes sense, there's another force working against you. It's called present bias. Your brain is wired to value immediate rewards far more than future ones. A small pleasure today feels more real than a much larger benefit later. That's why knowing you should save doesn't stop you from spending. The solution isn't trying to care more about the future. Your brain doesn't respond to lectures. Instead, you change what you focus on. Stop thinking about losing $27 today. Start thinking about having $10,000 in 12 months. When the destination becomes vivid, the daily action stops feeling like deprivation. It starts feeling like progress. You're not losing money, you're building something. Research consistently shows that people who visualize concrete outcomes stick with difficult behaviors far longer than those who don't. Your brain needs a clear finish line, not abstract discipline. Automation handles the mechanics. Daily breakdown makes the goal manageable, but motivation still has to come from somewhere deeper, and that's where most people never look. In the next chapter, we'll talk about why you actually want this money, how emotion drives financial behavior more than logic ever will, and how to use psychology to save instead of spend. Up to this point, everything we've talked about has been logical. Automation removes friction. Breaking the goal down makes it manageable. The math checks out. And yet, logic alone has never made anyone wealthy. If it did, Everyone who understands compound interest would already be rich. What actually determines whether someone reaches $10,000 or gives up halfway is emotional alignment. Not motivation, not discipline, alignment. Most people save money because they think they're supposed to, because a financial advisor said so, because an article told them it was responsible, because everyone online seems to be talking about investing. That kind of motivation evaporates the moment temptation shows up. Real progress only happens when saving connects to something personal enough that it changes behavior under pressure. This is where people get uncomfortable because it forces honesty. Why do you actually want this money? Not the polite answer, not the answer that sounds mature, the real one. For some people, it's the memory of growing up broke and promising themselves they'd never live with that level of uncertainty again. For others, it's watching their parents work nonstop and realizing they don't want the same future. Sometimes it's the freedom to leave a job that's draining the life out of you. Sometimes it's being able to help someone you love without panicking about your bank balance. Whatever it is, it has to be felt, not just understood. Because when you're standing in a store deciding whether to buy something you don't need, facts won't stop you. Emotion will. This is why companies spend billions studying your psychology. They know how to trigger anticipation, insecurity, and urgency. They know how to keep you wanting the next thing, but that power isn't one-sided. The same emotional wiring that makes people overspend can be used to make saving automatic and meaningful. When you attach savings to a clear personal reason, you're no longer fighting yourself. You're working with your brain instead of against it. And then there's temptation, the quiet force that derails even well-planned systems. Most people misunderstand how temptation works. They think the pleasure comes after buying something. In reality, the pleasure comes before, during anticipation. That dopamine spike is what pushes you to spend. Once the item is purchased, the feeling fades. That's why impulse buys feel exciting and disappointing almost at the same time. The solution isn't saying no forever. That just creates resistance. The solution is delay. When you see something you want, tell yourself not now. Write it down, let yourself imagine owning it, then wait 30 days. Research shows that the vast majority of impulses disappear when given time. The urgency was artificial. The desire was temporary. The items that survive the delay are usually worth buying. The rest quietly fall away. This one habit does more than save money. It trains your brain to distinguish real wants from manufactured ones. Once that happens, something else shifts. You stop seeing prices as just numbers. You start seeing future value. That $5 coffee isn't just $5. Invested instead, it becomes something far larger over time. Every purchase becomes a trade between now and later. Wealthy people think this way instinctively. Every dollar spent is a dollar that can no longer grow. People who struggle financially tend to think only in terms of immediate satisfaction. This isn't about never enjoying life. Some experiences are absolutely worth the cost. The difference is awareness. And then there's the factor nobody likes to talk about, ego. Most spending beyond basic needs isn't about utility. It's about image, keeping up, signaling success. The more money people make, the more expensive their identity becomes. Raises disappear into better cars, nicer apartments, and lifestyle upgrades that feel necessary but add no lasting happiness. True wealth usually looks boring. Real financial security doesn't need to announce itself. Reducing ego spending doesn't mean living small. It means being honest about what actually improves your life and what just feeds comparison. When you combine automation, delayed spending, future value thinking, and emotional clarity, saving stops feeling like sacrifice. It becomes the natural result of how you think. There will still be challenges, unexpected expenses, temptations that feel hard, months that don't go perfectly, but systems absorb mistakes, frameworks prevent spirals. The difference between people who build wealth and those who don't isn't intelligence or income. It's structure. Most people wait for the perfect moment to start saving. That moment never comes. Life doesn't slow down. Expenses don't magically disappear. The only real difference is whether you act with what you already know. $10,000 isn't earned in a single decision. It's built through small choices that stop fighting your psychology and start working with it. Your future self doesn't need perfection, just consistency.